Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're tuning in from. Welcome to the January edition of Shaping EDU Live. Today, it's actually a very special edition. If you are here for the Humersive Learning Project kickoff, you've come to the right place. But before we delve into all the fun things associated with Humersive learning, such as what does that even mean? I'm going to give those of you who may be new to the Shaping EDU community are coming in just because you're interested in this project, just a little bit of context to set the stage for today. So for those of you who are new to the Shaping EDU community, the best way that I could describe this community, other than being a group of dreamers, doers, and drivers and with a stake in building the future of education, is that we were founded in 2018 as a group of 129 education changemakers from across the globe. And when we got together, we knew that we had a mission to shape the future of learning in the digital age, but we didn't quite know how and what we were going to be focusing on. So the very first thing we did as a nascent community was sort of formalize a manifesto of sorts.
Hey, Sam, sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
We just can't see your screen. We see you, you're beautiful, but we can't see your slides.
Oh, okay, no problem. Let me try this again. Excellent. How about now?
There we go. Yep.
All right, perfect. So you can actually see our founding 10 actions, which may be helpful. This group of 129 change makers got together, and by a series of working discussions and some lightning presentations, we really landed on collectively our founding 10 actions, how we're going to shape the future of learning. So some folks who may be used to coming to communities of practice that are digitally or technology focused may be familiar with technology forecasting and making predictions. And what we're trying to do here essentially is say that there are areas that are evergreen, right? It doesn't necessarily matter what the new technologies are or aren't, but what we do know is the impact we want to have on education. We know, for example, we want to humanize learning experiences. We want to better connect education to the workforce of the future. We want to foster immersive learning. And so here is a little bit more background on us and where we've been since that point. I will just share the link with you, which is shapingedu.asu.edu, as well as our official hashtag across all social media channels. And then our tag on Twitter, our handle on Twitter is shapingedu. But you could see just from the last photo or the last picture to this picture, which we're so thrilled to have Karina Branson, who actually sketched all this original artwork for us on the call here today. But for our 2019 event, when we brought our community together, plus a ton of new voices and faces, we revisited our 10 actions, and through a series of working sessions, we built upon them. And so some things you may notice that weren't in the previous image, for example, there's a Black Swan Lake. And that's the area of Shaping EDU where we're really looking at outliers. And now you see Humersive Park. And that is the area where the project that we're going to be talking about today is actually taking place. So when you think about, shaping the future of learning in the digital age, there is a lot of importance on how the community actually convenes, both physically and digitally. So we like to see sort of this kind of visualization of all these focus areas as different neighborhoods and different things that we're working on together. So what do we actually do when we get together? What do we do towards, these actions? How are we moving the needle? Well, the great thing about Shaping EDU is we have all this collective wisdom to harvest, plus those who may not necessarily participate in the community, but have subject matter expertise and voice they want to share. So we partner as a community with various institutions, with other communities, with other organizations to actually collaboratively create through live sessions and asynchronous sessions, free and open resources to advance our actions and move the needle across the field. So I'm going to share with you just a couple examples of the type of work that this community has produced together. Just really quickly, you could find this all on our website. Of course, one of our very first partnerships was with the Co-Action Learning Lab at Penn State University. Now the Co-Action Learning Lab is part of Shaping EDU. And together we created a framework for stakeholder inclusion in the technology planning process. So as you're thinking about promoting access and equity, one of our founding actions, for example, and as you think about what that means for technology use in the digital age, we're making a pretty clear statement that it's less about what technologies you choose and more about what the decision-making process looks like and how you are inviting in stakeholders every step of the way. So we got together and through lots of work we ended up creating a framework to help university and college leaders better embed students and faculty voice and staff voice throughout the whole process. Another resource we published last month was a guide to building effective communities of practice. This was a resource put together by dozens of collaborators across the Shaping EDU community and beyond to help others, create and sustain, especially digital communities of practice like this one. Another resource that we're currently working on is active learning in the digital realms, a capability and maturity model. And so what's unique about all the resources we create, if you want to know where do they come from, and oh, this is great, I want to use it, but I see something I'd like to add. What's unique is you actually get to participate in helping us enhance, edit, revise, and actually publish the final product and get author credits as well along the way. And so these styles of events that we do are always leading towards the production of a project, a product, or a service to benefit education, the broader education community in some way, and of course published to our website. Which brings us to the current project that we're here to talk about today, the Humersive Learning Project, which is an actionable exploration of the intersection of humanity and immersive learning. You can learn a little bit more on the project. You are likely here because you received an email from us to begin with, or because you know Maya and Emery and they roped you in. But we'd love for you to read a little bit more background on the project or share with interested colleagues. Also, if you're worried that a colleague might be missing this very important Zoom, or you're thinking, oh, this all seems like exciting work for me, but this is my first Shaping EDU Live. Have no fear. You can catch up on all past episodes by going to the Shaping EDU community on our YouTube channel. And then I also want to give a shout out, a quick plug to the Shaping EDU Unconference, which is taking place March 11th through 13th in Tempe, Arizona. This is our third annual Unconference, and the one time our dreamer, doer, drivers get together face-to-face annually, and a number of universities, colleges, corporations, NGOs are co-conveners and helping make this event happen. You can see just from the picture, the photo from last year's event, that it is always well attended. And this is really, you could think of this as our annual event where we set the priority and agenda for what we're going to be working on together throughout the year. And we get traction on some of our active projects. And so if you're in the audience today and you're already attended, woohoo, we're looking forward to seeing you in March. If you're new to this community or you didn't receive an invitation, this is an invitation only event. That said, we want to hear from you if you're here today and you're involved in this work. We'd love to find some way to get you to the Unconference. Just shoot me a quick email if you're interested. And then finally, enough out of me. It's really time to get to the heart of the presentation and production today, which is getting you over to our innovators and residents. Shaping EDU really values the perspectives and expertise of those from around and outside of ASU, and as part of refreshing our perspective and making sure we have the subject matter expertise needed to tangibly move some of our big projects forward, we bring in innovators from other institutions to help lead these projects. And so I'm really, really, really honored to have two of my dear friends and colleagues, gosh, a decade of friendship at this point?
I think it's a decade, yep.
Oh, yes. Emery Craig and Maya Georgieva, co-founders of digitalbodies.net. We've worked together on a number of projects. I remember working with them, and they always had this bend towards innovation and early adopters of immersive and emerging technologies. And they'd always run these amazing in-person workshops to help educators and education professionals learn new skills, think about things a little differently, and anticipate what's coming next. And so we are so lucky to have them with us leading this project. And so they're here to talk about what the Humersive Learning Project is. This is a project that is kicking off here today, but there will also be some work done around it at the Shaping EDU Unconference in March. And so I promise I'm about to turn it over to you. Before I do, I'm going to make a couple quick housekeeping announcements, just so Mai and Emery, you have everyone's full attention. I want to bring one more person to light, and that's Karina Branson. So Karina, if your camera's not on and you want to kind of chime in and say hello.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see all of your faces, those who I know and those who I have yet to meet. I'm delighted to be here, and I'll be capturing the content digitally, illustrating it as we're talking. So once we're through with the slides, I'll be sharing my screen and you'll get to follow along.
Excellent. So we are an action-oriented community, as you can tell, that likes to produce artifacts. And so this session today will be graphically represented with Karina's beautiful art. And you can weigh in with some of your observations once we see the output at the end.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds
I also
great.
want to really quickly thank Lara Geringer, our wonderful community engagement guru and community organizer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
And so, okay, mute your mics if you're not talking. Get on Twitter if you want to back channel, #ShapingEDU. That's enough out of me. Without further ado, I introduce you to Maya Georgieva and Emery Craig.
Thank you, Sam. This is just wonderful to be here to be with friends we know and some new people that we'd love to hear and I'd love to learn more about, and we'll give you that opportunity as we open up with sort of sharing our ideas and thoughts at this point of time. But really, it's important to thank you, Sam, and for your role in pioneering Shaping EDU and everything you did to get this off the ground, keep this going, ball rolling, as well as Lab, Aurora, everybody at ASU, and just, the milestone to have the third Shaping EDU Unconference this year is just amazing. And, for us, it's a thrill to be able to contribute and drive this community forward. So I'm going to share, I think very quickly, we are going, for some of you, maybe you've know about us, or we've, hold on, maybe we've met, but here we go. I know that I certainly have some new faces and names on this session, so I want to make sure we get to introduce ourselves as we're kicking off this project at the very beginning of the year. So the Humersive Learning projects really respond to several of the teams from the 2019 Shaping EDU Unconference. And the project basically will consider human and student experience in the context of emerging technologies and their conversion with extended reality and artificial intelligence, and something that we also refer to spatial computing. So while, Emery and I have been thinking about this for now almost a decade, trying to really, look into the future and see the impact of this spatial computing, as well as the convergence with AI and machine learning and IoT and wearables, and its impact directly on education and society. And many of you know, we write and put together the digitalbodies.net website, which you can follow all of our work. I also I lead the Center for the X Reality Center at the New School here in New York City. And I also give opportunity to Emery to introduce himself at this time.
Thank you, Maya, and absolutely wonderful to be here. And thank you, Sam. Yeah, this goes way back. As Sam was talking, I was thinking about our very early days of lugging around suitcases full of Google Cardboards that we would demo early versions of VR with everybody. And, you know, we'd walk into a room and say, has anybody used VR before? And it was like, no, or just one or two hands would go up. And it kind of went from that to the very different world that we are in today. Yes, with Maya, co-founder Digital Bodies, and these days I do a great deal of consulting work, traveling around the country. I work with higher education organizations, K-12 schools, government organizations. In higher ed, I've played a number of roles, everything from chairing a liberal arts program for non-traditional adult students to director of e-learning and interim CIO. So been kind of just a wide variety of roles. And I guess that's one reason why I feel at home in the unconference, because I feel like it's constantly morphing into different shapes and forms, and there's all these opportunities to contribute in different ways as part of this.
So for those of you who basically looked at this project and said, Humersive learning, what is this?
What is this?
Well, add this word to your dictionary, and because we'll be sending you a number of other and sharing and using it. And so it better stop showing as a new word. It's a word we actually happened to coin at the 2019 conference. And this is almost like the moment when this happened. And of course, it's me, Sam, Michael Berman, and of course, everybody's involved because Emory actually took this shot. And we have it because he was on task as well. And what you can see behind us is the very first version of Humersive Park, which really our graphic facilitator today, Corinna Branson, as we were talking, she just, sketched out this. So this is what happens when you get together with a lot of talented people, dreamers, doers, and drivers. And this is how it all got started. So this is where things started to happen. But I think it's important for us as we do this kickoff to kind of share where we see this going as driving this project forward with Emory, and the way we kind of think. There are lots of layers, and we definitely, this is an opening conversation, and certainly we'll be looking for your perspectives and contribution. But as a starting point, we want to offer this kind of Humersive blends two terms together, humanize and immersive. And this is how that conversation literally evolved at the conference. And it's really to inspire us to think how human experience will be shaped by the conversion of XR and AI. In that sort of intersection, we'd like to really see, as these technologies, as these, this context is starting to really profoundly impact our experience, what does it mean for education? And as we look into basically the future, and we want to be, really our guiding question to be, in the center of the human experience, the learner experience. And so our guiding question for this project is how we can humanize these technology while simultaneously fostering innovation that will bring disruptive change to education. And this is what I think we're all in. We'd like to see this, bring about transformative change to higher education and at the educational context. And not just like think about, how collectively with the community, how do we get there? What is the work that needs to happen? What are some of the jobs that needs to take place in order to move forward? And so as we explore these guiding questions, and in particularly as we think about fostering innovation, we thought that it will be useful, to start to basically to structure our initial work around 5 pillars. And I say initial work because really, it's the kickoff.
This could change.
So, and we expect it to somewhat change. So, as we get, further along in this project, we may need to revise them. Some may drop, but more likely, we may need to add additional ones and see what we're missing and what additional opportunities there are. Emery, you want to chime in?
Sure. I just add to what Maya's saying here that I think we're really at an inflection point in higher education right now. The world around us is changing so fast. So many sectors are undergoing upheaval, and it's really up to us to bring us into the future. And I think the Unconference is really the perfect vehicle to do this. Even just the way that we have shaped this project, because this really, as Maya said, this really came out of a conversation at the last Unconference in March in Tempe. And it was interesting because there were different groups of people, some of us talking about immersive learning, immersive technologies. There were other groups talking about how we humanize technology, how we humanize learning. And it was as those different conversations evolved, then we started to put them together and we started to think about the opportunities here. So I think that's critically important as we go through this. And as Maya said, we really have an opportunity here, not just to sort of set something up and say, this is what we're going to do, but to basically create the seeds for a project that will evolve over the next couple of months. And that some of this might change, some of the pillars may be less important or may disappear, some of them may be more important, others may be added as we go through.
So what we're going to do in the next 10 minutes, we actually are going to go over the pillars as we basically frame them at this point in time. And then we will open it up to discussion for all of you to share your feedback, your comments, your reaction to this kind of basically emerging framework as we look into shaping our work in the next few months. And then at the end, we'll close with call for action and give you basically outline what are the opportunities for contributions and how we see this work taking shape in the next sort of months before the Unconference at ASU in Tempe, and then the months after. So I'm going to basically move us forward to the first one, which is our first pillar, efficacy of immersive learning experiences. And as we look into this framework, we want to really focus and zoom in on immersive learning experiences. There are lots of interesting, I think, things happening and timely, exciting things, and in a fast-paced world as well as in education. But the way we look into experience, and in particular immersive experiences, to focus on the features of space, time, body, and identity. We think that this is, for the most part, in the last decade, we've been focusing a lot on interface, on a lot of technology, and less on experience. And as we're looking into humanizing learning and a framework that will focus mostly on this human experience, that is why we put experience in the center. And then we would like to think about pedagogical possibility of these virtual experience to further each other. And in some ways generate more effective learning experiences. In some ways they may play into, it's the interplay of space, time, body, and identity that creates a meaningful experience. And sometimes it's just space. And so some of the, areas where basically we see that these contextual environments providing new affordances is in diving deeper into, how can we think through expeditions, taking people to places that they're normally not able to do, whether it's, deeper into the cell or the human heart, or it's in places that they cannot reach, like even out of this world. And so then the ability about role space, role play, what happens when you step in somebody else's shoes, and what additional perspectives do come to play in this context. Very dear to me, the idea about using the space as a creative medium, it really for creative expression. We've been talking so much about our students as makers and creators. And I think we have now a new opportunity for going for prototyping and giving them an opportunity to build and create in an unparalleled ways. And then moving into story living, the idea of narratives. You know, how do we engage with in immersive storytelling? And what does this, these new opportunities create for meaningful emotional experiences, which is so the idea of stories came so many times in thinking about humanizing the educational context. And so this is an area where we'd like to really explore as well. Of course, simulations and gameplay, which, you know, in some of our fields in education, whether it's medical or engineering, we'd like students to be able to practice those skills just as you are in the flight simulator. And I think there's, again, unique opportunities that immersive technologies offer that. And which brings me to the kind of last one we're thinking, and brings us to the idea of convergence, right? The conversion of spatial computing and artificial intelligence. The idea of a coach, a mentor, a virtual being that will know you and able to understand even perhaps your needs, that will be able to push you forward in some ways, introduce you to new ways of thinking, and will reshape really how we do things in education, the roles of students, the roles of faculty, the roles of university. And so in sort of that pillar, we see anchoring this learner experience and you know, an exciting opportunity to really kind of look into our guiding questions through that perspective. And last, focusing on technology that have been just, and pedagogy that have been just really speaking to the traditional classroom. So that is sort of our first pillar here. And as I said, please feel free to use the chat, but coming up is an opportunity to also speak to it. Emery.
Okay, thank you. So one of the pillars here, of course, is access and accessibility in XR. And this is a question that we get all the time. It comes up in talks that I do. It comes up in workshops that we do. I know Maya encounters it all the time. It's a critical issue as we move into the era of immersive technology. And there's a number of different ways that we can look at this and ways that I think we need to ask questions about it. Part of it, of course, is just access. Headsets are becoming less expensive, but immersive technology is not affordable for everyone. Smartphones are not really affordable either for a large number of people, but almost everyone has one because it's become such a central aspect of their lives. Having a VR headset is not really essential to live your life. So it's kind of hard to say to students, well, you're just going to bring one, right? For right now, we're going to have to figure out ways, I think, to provide access. And of course, it's not just the hardware, it's also the bandwidth. Broadband, we kind of take for granted, but not every student has broadband, and that in itself can become an issue. So we have to question how we can support student access to the technology, making sure that they have the skills and the tools that they need for the future. Second aspect of this is how the headsets can be customizable. I think one of the things that we kind of fall into the trap here is that we go, oh, a headset is a headset is a headset. Well, it's not really. First of all, everybody's got different faces, as we know. Everyone has different distances between their eyes. There's something called interpupillary distance, IPD. And when a headset is designed for the average person, guess what? That means a lot of people, it's not all that comfortable for. And it's one of the things that causes motion sickness. I don't know if we'll ever overcome it, but it's an issue. And this is one of the things that we need to see is how can we make the devices more customizable. Finally, the third question here that we need to raise is, of course, the one of accessibility for people with disabilities. And partly this is dependent on vendors. I think I know Samsung, HP, Lenovo have done a good deal of work here, though not as much as Microsoft, but it's up to us to put pressure on them. And it's also up to us in the development of immersive experiences to make sure that we have that that commitment to diversity, that there are disabled people on our production teams, that there's gender, there's you know, the range of gender, that we accommodate everybody's needs, because it's not just about the equipment itself, it's also about the design of immersive experiences. So, okay, Maya, we can go on to the next pillar, because I'm doing this one too, right? So the third one is the convergence of spatial computing and AI. And this is something, of course, I wrestle with a lot, because I see on the one hand immersive experience developing, immersive technologies developing, artificial intelligence is developing. In fact, if you laid a graph over the two in terms of their development, you would see almost a parallel track from the 1950s all the way up until today. So, and these are in some ways separate developments, but they're not going to be. They're already beginning to converge. On the one hand, we're going to have AI-generated experiences. Facebook has already demonstrated this, because one of the challenges with headsets right now is that, you know, you have to have a full resolution display. You really only need that full resolution where you're looking, and of what's called a foveated rendering. But then how would you render the rest of the display? Facebook says it would just be done through artificial intelligence. Well, how does something like that impact learning? But the more important question here, of course, is what happens when we start to get AI-driven avatars in higher education, particularly AI-driven avatars in immersive environments? There's going to be profound ethical challenges here, and of course, tremendous opportunities. We're going to have the option of personal tutors, probably tutors that can follow us around. Samsung kind of introduced what they called artificial humans at the CES conference last week, which is incredibly bizarre, because they're really not quite artificial humans, they're more like glorified chatbots, but it's a step on that road. And even this language of artificial humans is going to be something that comes up. And once you've got artificial humans, do we next have artificial teachers? Do we have artificial, you know, I don't know. There's all sorts of ways that this can go, but obviously this has a huge impact on the humanization of immersive technologies. So the other question to ask here, of course, is what skills will our students need to in the future to live in a world where avatars are everywhere, where they're not just there on a screen, where we're not just doing immersive experiences where we see something or we step into something, but where we step into something and we encounter somebody else. And we don't know if that person's real or if that person is virtual, or maybe they're both, who knows? So.
Yes, and I think in this moment we see this opportunity, and really a shift in technology now, no longer being a tool to solve a task or even to execute a task, but the platform for human experience. And I think this is radically changing the way we use technology in the past, which is something in our pocket, something on our screen, and now we're stepping into something, as Emery said, when the virtual becomes real, and and basically the boundaries blur. Yeah. We think that spatial computing will challenge and undermine these practices, and hence the opportunity for us to think, well, what are the new practices and the new ways to think about these emerging technologies?
Yeah, and let's just say that at the moment, I don't think either higher education or society has a very good track record in handling the fake appearances on social media. Most people can't even tell a fake, social bot right now, and we're going to have to move from that on into how we evaluate whatever we encounter in our immersive worlds that we're going to have. Finally, the next pillar on this, of course, is ethics in digital age. And I know Randy's here from Yale, I think, and so he heard me, and some of you may have heard me talk about this the other day at Yale, where I was talking about the future of XR. And there's just a host of issues here, from questions of privacy, which just go far beyond anything we've dealt with up to this point in terms of privacy, of gender and harassment, of the intensity of immersive experiences, and again, fake experiences. So as we think about the humanization of these technologies, there's a number of questions that we could ask here, which is, well, first of all, how does VR impact us as human beings? If VR can transform learning, if it can reshape our memories, does that mean it could create false memories? Could it create false learning or different forms of learning that we may not like? We've asked this question before. I think it's still very relevant, which is, does it actually foster empathy? Or is it just feelings of sympathy that of course are transitory and quickly disappear? There's again the issues of privacy, of gender, are all questions that I think we're going to have to wrestle with, not only over the next couple of months leading up to the unconference, but throughout the years that follow as these technologies progress so quickly. And finally, the real question here is, what strategies can we develop to engage our students on these issues and build digital fluency? The real challenge here is to go, I think, beyond where we are now. We talk a lot about digital literacy, but our frameworks here are really designed for another world, a world where we primarily read. And what we're beginning to move into now is a world where we primarily experience. And even what we in the past have experienced through reading, we're going to be able to have virtual experiences of. So then the question becomes, how do we understand, evaluate, analyze these virtual experiences? Okay, Maya, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, which brings us to our last pillar before we open it up for discussion, where we really want to propose a set of questions as we think about spatial computing, as we think about their application in education, the opportunity to create new learning models, and learning experience that will transcend the way we see in what happens with technology in the classroom today. We also, as dreamers, doers, and drivers, we want to know how to scale this up. It's very important for us that these immersive solutions are able to really not only work within part of the institution or with individual institutions, but we find ways to scale them up and share and move move the field forward. And also the opportunity, which is as we are at the beginning, at the birth of this new medium, virtual reality. And as we have an opportunity to really ask critical questions. And with that, the opportunity to reimagine and possibly transform higher education in the context of these new affordances that we're gaining. And so in some ways, we think about this as an ecosystem, and this was very important for us to not not basically think through this an experience or a set of experience or a course or a program, but really think about the ecosystem, because this, only as we think about in this context, we see the transformative power to not just to change the way we do business as usual, to change how we envision the roles of our institutions, our faculty, or create opportunities for those roles to develop and evolve and emerge. And so we really are interested in kind of disruptive change across multiple layers: teaching, learning, organizational structures, and all of the above. And so this is I think, the sort of kind of like builds up on this idea of how do we think about immersive learning. These are pillars that we feel, conversations we need to engage with in order to dive deeper and in order to produce something that will be, the community, helpful to the community, move the community forward, raise these questions. And at this time, we want to open up for your reflection and your feedback on these pillars and how you see them engaging with each other. So make sure you're on, your volume is on, but please jump in.
Yeah, yes. Please do.
And I want to, Maya and Emery, thank you so much for presenting these pillars to us and really grounding kind of the work of the project that you're going to be doing and the questions, that you're attempting to answer, the areas of ethics, accessibility, innovation, what does efficacy actually look like? these are some really large questions that you're grappling with, and I'm really looking forward to this community, the Shaping EDU community, being a hub where we sort out those types of questions and we also start to build something together. So I will echo mine, Emery. Thank you so much, and kind of kick it over to those of you in the audience. I know we had a robust chat going. Any comments, questions, observations, personal experiences, and perspectives you wish to share to build on mine, Emery's pillars?
So this is Mary. I had this idea a while ago, actually, right after the experience where there was the gentleman, a teenager who was wearing the Trump hat on the lawn there, and they were accosted by adults and, you know, told that they were racist because they're wearing this hat. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting in that experience, because there's so many players in that experience, to have an opportunity for people to choose their own adventure in reference to taking on a different and make you feel as a person who's gone through those different experiences, and how would you place individuals in those settings so that they understood the dynamics of the experiences that led those individuals to act and react the way that they did. And so I think that when you think of hummersive learning and humanizing learning, it's thinking about how do you build that backstory and deliver it in a really effective way quickly, so that you can kind of catch up the learner and make them feel like they're part of that place. So I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think about how you would set the scene and how we would use technology to help us do that, and how you would use general human knowledge of human interaction to help kind of set that scene.
I mean, I think that this leads to kind of the idea of that in virtual reality, or in these, you know, immersive environments, spatial computing, you actually, it's a much more, the way you engage in this is basically stepping into the context, is very much on a deeper emotional level, and also the opportunity to understand the sort of the sociology of you know, the other participants, and particularly when you step into different shoes, you may enter the same experience from different perspectives. And it's very interesting because there's a lot of research that is taking place right now, that when you have the opportunity to, you know, basically live, and, you know, not a moment, but live, you know, what is kind of sometimes even an accelerated timeline, live through those experiences, you tend to create a greater empathy. You tend to basically be a little bit, to open your mind to considering additional questions. And in that, possibly asking better questions. So I think this leads us to the idea that this is not just prescribed, like sort of some of the education that happens today, which is read about this, you know, or prescribed through some kind of planning or strategic techniques, even in some of our classroom. But on the contrary, it takes you to experience it on a human level. Now, we're all still learning really about how to basically use this in a more effective way to bring that efficacy to a learning experience. And you know, the research that is taking place it's informative and it's leading, but certainly I think that in particularly making an educational experience, we are very early on in better understanding, and hence the opportunity to create some framework and some frames around which will be, you know, driving as people attempt to do this on campuses with partners, both within and outside of education and industry. You know, some frame of reference that can guide them, and in particularly with the efficacy in immersive learning experience, this is one of the areas where we're looking for some of that work to take place.
And I think it's a good question that you raised, Mary, and it's It's really about us doing more than just sharing content. And it's, you know, with immersive technologies, you see that a lot. The really low-hanging fruit in immersive technology right now is things like medical simulations, engineering, architectural stuff, all of which is great. It's absolutely wonderful. But where the real transformative power is when you start to get into issues and situations like the one that you raised. And, you know, we're going to become storytellers. And as storytellers, there's all sorts of different ways that you can approach this, which is, yes, you know, you can tell a story so that when someone goes into it, they don't just have they're just not learning the story, it's their reaction to it that becomes important, that they all of a sudden see themselves in someone else's shoes and then look at it in a different way. So I think that's going to be incredibly important. And you know, maybe even down the road, we're going to end up with content specialist and storyteller specialist, if you will. I don't know if everyone has the skills to do that, or maybe so, or maybe we'll just evolve. And you know, you could also say that any good faculty in a classroom is always a storyteller because they're engaging, they do more than just share content. There's a way that they do it that brings it to life. But now we have this wonderful opportunity to bring any imaginable experience to life, including ones that are very uncomfortable for us. And we have to think carefully about how we do that and the ways that, you know, that will put students into those experiences.
Yeah, and I think it goes in a very, I think, philosophical way. It's learning that basically awakes curiosity and passion and the desire to know. So it's like that journey of constructing knowledge rather than taking people through sequence of steps in imparting knowledge. And I think that's I think the real opportunity in immersive learning experiences. And in basically these, it's not about transferring you know, necessarily practice, but it's really making people curious, making people inspired and interested in the topic, and as a result, you know, basically setting them on a journey of discovery.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And
I'm just gonna step back just for the sake of time, because that question took us to some really interesting places. I just want to see, and we can continue to pull at that thread. Are there any other audience questions? Any observations? Again, the chat has been quite illuminating.
It has been.
Hi, it's Jan from the company Silicon Hagen in Denmark. Over the past year, I've been on an incredibly interesting journey with it's a vocational education training consortium here in Denmark. And a year ago, they started off saying, look, we want to do virtual reality. And from that point, to cut a very long story short, today they're not just doing virtual reality; they're actually immersing themselves and critically appraising and actually going into actually asking what is this good for, and how can we, and really they are transforming virtual reality from just being a tech that's washing over them to keep bashing at it with critical appraisal and questions and students and educators. And it's emerged from them just we want to do virtuality to now we're creating a national network and a national center. And it's all come out of that journey from doing virtuality to actually immersing yourself and actually realizing here are some real critical questions that we need to ask ourselves and also the tech in why we are here and why we are engaging with this. And that journey has been transformational for them and has brought on board not just this vocational education training consortium, but now bringing on board municipalities, industry, a whole raft of national players that are liking this way of actually not just gobbling up the technology for everything it's promised to do, but actually asking questions of it and being critical appraisers and also being immersed in its development rather than just it being a solution that's being sold or washes over them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you for this comment. I think that's why we're so interested in, and we didn't shy away for calling this Humersive learning, focusing on the human experience and on our student experience. And I think there's a lot of interest now in creating this content. And I think sometimes, there's obviously, even in the ecosystem, there's a market opportunity, there's a university opportunity, but what we really want to see is our students as creators. And, I see my role as actually inspiring the next generation of immersive storytellers and creators and designers, because that is really, it is that generation. We need to really open, the space for them. So I'm seeing time, and I want to make sure we kind of like really go over the call to action and how you can participate, because this is the kickoff. This is only the opening of this conversation, and we're really hoping to see you engage in the next 2 months as we collectively collaborate and create this framework together. And so some of you may already be on the have signed up to the project. You may have received information about how to join Slack. So please do so. We will be posing some of these critical questions and hope to hear from you and bringing some of the comments you made in the chat today. We also trying to engage this into a weekly sessions. We are kind of really looking into the next 5 weeks being our pure weeks. We will be having a working session towards another working session with those of you involved in the end of February, just before we actually set sail to the Shaping EDU on conferences, where we will have an on-site Humersive Learning working session as well. And so this will be posted on the Slack channel, but just to give you an idea, these actually will be open immediately. So you can contribute to and share notes and comments and ideas on all 5 pillars, including pillars that you see we need to bring on new topics, please do. But we are going to try and structure the conversation in the context of these weeks around a single pillar, just so that we all have a little bit more opportunity to dive deeper and focus. And so you see some of, in addition to that, in these weeks, Emery and I will be actually available for synchronous conversation in the Slack channel during those times. Again, this will be shared later on within the Slack channel and all of you, and we hope to see you there. We hope to see you during those times in kind of more, if you're able to join in some of those sessions. But again, all of the 5 pillars are open today. So I think that we're really excited to really for the opportunity for all of us to engage in this conversation. And I'd love to see really Karina, we wanted to share the pillars and all of this, but who's just so talented and just as I mentioned, Humersive Park was something that she heard us talking and was the first one to visualize it. So I think it would be a good opportunity to step back into the visual representation of our conversation.
If you stop sharing your screen, I'll share mine.
Okay.
Thank you, Maya, for encapsulating that call to action so succinctly. shapingedu.asu.edu is the website to find all this information and where updates will be shared. Of course, by virtue of registering for this event, you are now on our email list. We will not be spamming you, only updating you on opportunities to engage and participate. I guess it depends on what your idea of spam is. I guess you really can't spell spam without Sam. I can't believe I said that out loud.
You did, Sam. You went there.
I went there. Thank you again so much, Maya and Emery as well. I'm really looking forward to joining you in all of this. I know I've personally signed up. And Karina, there's amazing visualization.
Incredible.
So take it away. What did you see and hear today?
Awesome. Thanks so much for this opportunity. And I'm excited to add a little bit more detail after the fact. But I think the thing that's really cool about Humersive learning is that it's a lot of people might initially anticipate it's all about technology, and it's really all about the human experience. And so I just love that the technology is truly a tool that's being used to push the envelope to what is possible in learning. And a lot of these themes that we keep hearing in the Shaping EDU community of making sure that this is collaborative, student-centered, access and accessibility, especially with these technologies that, even though the cost is coming down, are still really prohibitive for a lot of folks. So thinking about creative ways to address that, as well as people with differing abilities. And I'm just thinking about different learning styles. As you can tell, I'm a visual learner, and so and a kinesthetic learner. And so I can just imagine if I had had access to some of these things as a kid, how might that have shifted the way that I approach life? So I'm super excited to hear storytelling, really thinking about getting into different people's shoes. And I think that these experiences really can be a profound emotional connection. And that is what often lives on with us as people. So just a few of the nuggets that I heard.
Love those nuggets. If I could get them in
That's
half a
great.
meal, I would.
Yes. No, thank you so much. I think this reflects, I think, certainly the starting point of this conversation
It does.
today, and we can't wait to hear more voices in it.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite philosophers, Walter Benjamin, I'll paraphrase, said something along the lines of, true art is a collaboration between the artist and the audience. The audience builds on the art. So you can see what we started here today, the pillars that Emery and Mai have laid out, the artwork that Karina has created to encapsulate today's kickoff, right? The start of something big, ground zero. How are you going to build on this work? What is your contribution going to be? Certainly there are only so many hours in the day, and we have jobs and families and things. And so as you've explored those 5 pillars, maybe even think about where you can best provide some expertise and insights, and then maybe where you'd like to learn, areas that you'd like to learn about, and places, to kind of build on and interact with new colleagues. So thank you so much, Mai and Emery, for this great kickoff meeting. Lara, for all of your work organizing it, and Karina, of course, for tying it all together with the most beautiful bow. We'll be following up with everyone who registered with sort of the next steps. We'll also be updating the Shaping EDU website as this project, gains traction with updates. And I just want to thank everyone so much for being a part of the adventure. And until next time, keep dreaming, doing, and driving. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.